Hi, Mickey.
Hey, Bob.
How you doing?
I have to get out of here actually pretty quickly because
Medical emergency?
I have a medical emergency. Yes.
Oh.
I
hope it's nothing serious.
So do I. I went to visit my brother in Lake Tahoe, and I have this rash, and it's taking on the alarming bullseye pattern of
Lyme's disease.
So I want somebody to check it out. And I'm somewhat.
So are you going to go to a doctor?
I'm going to go to a doctor.
I think you can save yourself the trouble. I'm pretty sure you've got Lyme's disease, Mickey. If I were you, I'd move right on to the treatment phase.
Well, how am I going to get antibiotics if I don't go to a doctor, Bob?
You make a good point.
Unless some of our viewers would like to send them to me.
Tell you what, if it turns out you have Lyme's disease, I'll give you $50, okay? I'm betting you don't.
So it's like a win-win for me.
Win-win. That's right.
Well, the doctor's going to laugh at me. That's the annoying thing.
What?
The doctor's going to laugh at me.
Well, I'm trying to prepare you for that by laughing at you first.
Since I made the appointment, the rash is sort of barely perceptible. But
No, I know.
You know, but sometimes there's not a rash at all, and you still have Lyme disease.
Look, Mickey, I'm doing my best to avoid using the word hypochondriac, and if we don't change the subject, it's going to prove impossible, so maybe we should.
President Bush had this.
He had real Lyme's disease, or?
He had a rash, and he was injected with antibiotics, took the course of antibiotics, and so that's where he is. But he clears brush.
Well, that's one of several things you and he have in common.
Let's not go there. Okay.
That, conservative sympathies.
Yeah.
So, well, listen, such is my dedication to my chosen vocation that even though I'm on vacation, I'm doing this. I am in an undisclosed secure bunker on a remote island. And, I tried to arrange things so that the beach grass would be visible in the background, but the trouble is that with the lighting, it kind of gets blown out. So I'm gonna lower the lighting so that they can't see me, but can see the beach grass, which is probably their preference anyway. Come to think of it,
is Lori David fooling around with the local caretaker? Are we going to see her saunter by in the background?
You know, such is my lack of understanding of pop culture that I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's politics, Bob. Lori David is Larry David's wife.
I know that.
She lives on Martha's Vineyard, I believe.
I'm not on Martha's Vineyard. As I said, it's an undisclosed location. It's not Martha's Vineyard. I'm not one of you fancy pants writers who get together and network.
So she's a couple islands over, okay.
Mickey.
Anyway, she was fooling around with one of the locals. That's the gossip.
Well, it wasn't me, buddy.
Okay. It's your loss.
Well, okay. Let's talk about Iraq.
Okay.
I don't really know much about it. Not much. It just seemed like another couple of weeks in Iraq. I mean, there is this word that President Bush is beginning to cast Maliki as the villain, so that when they do their autumn report, they can say things are going well militarily, but politically, he's the problem.
Do you think that's what's going on? I think what's going on is that they would like to actually get rid of Maliki.
That too, yeah. I think they would like to, but first he can be a convenient scapegoat.
Yeah. I mean, that is happening. The other thing that's happening is that Democrats are starting to backtrack on their opposition to the war. They're sort of believing these arguments that the surge is worth pursuing, if not wildly successful. Mm-hmm. And the right wing is sort of gloating that, the Democrats they're coming back a full 360. Glenn Reynolds calls it the pivot. The Democratic candidates have sort of had a debate where they basically said, getting out of Iraq is very difficult. Don't expect us to get out right away. Mm-hmm. There was this article in the New York Times by 7 or 8 soldiers, sort of the bookend antidote to the O'Hanlon Pollock piece, saying, no, we're not about to win this.
Yeah. And inconveniently for Bush, this came on within a couple of days of the New York Times story in which he was quoted as saying, our troops are seeing this progress on the ground.
Well, they are seeing progress on the ground. Everybody agrees they're seeing progress in Anbar, but
these particular troops weren't exactly emphasizing that. Yeah, no, they do. They even conceded that much. These troops.
But the article was weak on a couple points. First,
I mean, we should set the stage a little. I mean, I guess everyone knows about the O'Hanlon Pollock op-ed. these kind of liberals who had supported the war to begin with, say, actually, it turns out it's going much better than you thought. They go visit Iraq. And then that was in the New York Times. And then these guys, as you said, it's seemingly the antidote. These are actual soldiers on the ground saying, guess again, notwithstanding what fancy pants experts say when they do a 2-day tour of Iraq, things are grim.
Things are grim. The army, as well as the police, they argued, are infiltrated by militias with sectarian ties. They told of an incident where an army unit had escorted people planting an IED that then exploded.
As I recall, I think they said both the police and the Iraqi army were complicit in that one event.
Right. Well, everybody knows the police is a bad force and is infiltrated and not a force for unity. But people
or Unitarianism. You're right.
People thought the army was, and if the army is infiltrated, that's bad. What the article was weak in terms of two things. First, it didn't quite answer the question of what do we do from here.
The prescriptive paragraph was no better than the ones the experts are generating, which is to say nobody actually has a good idea.
Withdraw and influence events from the margins. So I take it they mean withdraw, let the Iraqis fight it out among themselves, and if anything gets really out of hand, then intervene, but don't do this Petraeus strategy of embedding in the communities. Not necessarily crazy, but nothing particularly new and not particularly convincing that this was going to be any sort of solution. And second, it didn't really argue that the surge was having a bad effect. I thought it was. No. It argued that things were still,
just intrinsically very bad.
So it had those two defects, I thought.
Well, I don't know whether the latter was a defect. It's just something they didn't purport to be arguing.
It seems to me you're right. If they got bet on Iraqi.
And also, not having a good prescription doesn't exactly distinguish them from anybody else on the planet right now.
O'Hanlon, I noticed, was an advocate of soft partition. I was surprised to find that out. When you Google him on the web, he is sort of where we and Fred Kaplan are.
Yeah, I have long-standing pro-partition sympathies. Yeah. Speaking of Petraeus, the one thing, the kind of subtext of this piece, or maybe not so much, but I think something they probably had in mind is that when these journalists and scholars come to Iraq, they're in the hands of the American military. The American military obviously is going to expose them to some of the best case situations, where things are working pretty well. Not only that, when they're there, wherever they go, the soldiers they're watching are aware that they're there, so, a lot of people try to put on...
These are sophisticated people. They know they're getting a dog and pony show. This idea that they went to Iraq and were conned by the military into thinking the surge is working is insane. They went to Iraq knowing that the military would try to con them. They wanted to argue that the surge was working because they would like the surge to be supported for another year. They probably knew that going in.
Actually, you're missing the key datum on the argument you're making, I think.
Okay.
Which is that they said in the piece, and I was about to concede this. This is actually the thing that made me take the O'Hanlon-Pollock piece somewhat seriously. So what they said was, things look better than they have when we have been there in the past. So they always get a dog and pony show, and they're saying even compared to past dog and pony shows. Things look better. So that is actually, for me, that was significant. That was a significant finding. On the other hand, one thing I was wondering, you mentioned Petraeus. He is very savvy PR-wise, and it wouldn't surprise me if the dog and pony shows have gotten better since he's got there.
No, that's true. You would think that, I agree. Everybody says he answers reporters' emails immediately. He's totally on the ball.
Do you think, by the way, interesting question. He's kind of a political natural, I think. You can imagine him if a victorious general, having a long and happy future in American politics. If he just won like a world war. But I wonder, given the fact that it's almost certainly not going to be some kind of clear-cut victory, right? Do you think he is going to wind up with a future in politics?
It's happened before in other countries where I think losing generals have come back and been heroes. Nevertheless, I would say yes.
And do we know anything about his political sympathies? Would he be a...
All I hear is that he works his staff really hard and they all wind up hating him and quitting.
Is that right?
But 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 that doesn't mean he's not doing a good job. It means he works his staff really hard.
Well, some people work their staffs really hard and are still beloved. Of course, they're not involved in wars like this, probably.
Well, he sort of burned out himself with his first tour of duty. I mean, he had to retreat to Leavenworth, Kansas. So,
well, that was prepared. That was a good. That was he wrote the new counterinsurgency.
Well, but he was burned out. I'm told.
Yeah.
He was tired.
Don't blame him. So this God thing.
I wanted to recommend one article by an LA Times correspondent that Juan Cole links to. We'll post it on the site. It's about the attempt to restore the Dora neighborhood, or to restore order to the Dora neighborhood of Baghdad, which is a Sunni neighborhood, and it sort of it leads you. It gives you a very clear idea of what we're up against in the attempt to somehow keep Sunni neighborhoods stable within Shiite Baghdad, which is sort of the nub of the partition problem. Juan Cole thinks that we're stupid in thinking that all the insurgents shooting at us are Al Qaeda. In fact, he thinks they're local good old boys who, have now gone back, put on their civilian clothes, and blended in with the population. But they're still there and ready to resume the fight should we leave. And you get the impression from the LA Times correspondent that he's probably right about that.
We will link to that.
The alternative is telling the people in Dora, sorry, you have to leave now, and escorting them to a safer area. That seems somewhat difficult, too, if you read the piece.
We will still link to that.
Okay.
You're the one who's got the medical emergency,
Yeah, okay.
So, I mean, on the one hand, I feel bad about kind of pushing you from topic to topic, but I'd hate to see that bullseye grow.
No, I think it's stable, but...
It's stable?
But it's getting red, so yeah, we better get going.
Well, red is characteristic of rashes. That in itself does not mean you only have a few hours to live. I am going to feel silly, I got to admit, if you drop dead like an hour after this is posted for making light of it.
Good. Well, that'll be some compensation.
That'll teach me.
But you may look silly anyway. You're about to talk about God.
Yeah, you really. That's a lose-lose proposition. Well, there was this piece, that skyrocketed to the top of the New York Times most emailed list by Mark Lilla about God and religion and stuff. And so I figured we should talk about it. And I said, why don't we talk about this? And then I proceeded to read it. And did you have a chance? You didn't read the whole thing?
I read the beginning and the end. I always take the question is how is the West, which has a separation of church and state, going to deal with regions of the world that fuse politics and theology? Am I right about that?
That is correct. I mean, it was an odd piece for me because I've rarely so radically changed my opinion of a piece so late in the reading of it. I mean, I was, it's a magazine piece. It's pretty long. I was reading along and kind of very skeptical, kind of skeptical of the analytical framework and of some specific claims. Then he got to the end, and the take-home lesson was one I largely agreed with, so I thought, oh, okay, great piece, But as for, I think ultimately the long lead-in, which is kind of some very brisk intellectual/political history of the last several centuries, just ultimately is really not very closely connected to what the conclusion winds up being.
And what's the take-home lesson?
The conclusion is this. Do you remember this epic essay that Paul Berman wrote on Tariq Ramadan in New Republic?
I remember looking at it. I
28,000 words. I remember hearing that it was 28,000 words and then putting aside any notion of reading it. But thanks to some people on Blogging Heads who did read it and then talked about it, I have at least a dim idea of what the idea is.
Right.
I mean, Tariq Ramadan is this Islamic thinker, okay? I think Swiss-born or something. And, on the spectrum from moderation from moderate to radical Islamic thinkers, with the radicals being these jihadists we know we don't want to embrace, he's apparently kind of right on the cusp, where you kind of don't know is he friend or enemy? Do we want to embrace him and encourage this message or not? He's kind of seems pretty darn radical in some ways and so on. And I gather that Paul Berman, this kind of liberal hawk who coined the term Islamofascist, I believe, wound up wrestling with this question to an uncertain outcome. I mean, it sounded like he, on the one hand, was so put off by some of the guy's more radical utterances that he couldn't embrace him. On the other hand, for whatever reason, didn't want didn't feel like totally disavowing him and putting him in the enemy camp. Anyway, Lila's position is Ramadan is the kind of guy you need.
Right. I think Lila's position is we can't rely on liberalizers who are going to somehow convince believers in Islam in a separation of church and state. We have to somehow rely on renovators who are going to sort of warp the very teachings of Islam while keeping them fused to politics and make them compatible with modern liberal democracy.
Yeah,
is that a summary? Is that a good summary?
No. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I understand. I'm not sure I'm competent to say. I mean, I did read the piece and I did try to grasp every word what you just said. But
what's the part of Lila's argument that you like then?
Well, I think he's right. The part that I like is just recognizing that, look, the Islamic thinkers who seem most friendly to our way of thinking are going to be the ones who have no street cred among the people the Muslims whose views we're trying to soften, okay? I mean, the reductio ad absurdum of the alternative view, the alternative to Lila's view, okay, is, you mentioned this Muslim woman, she's in America now, and she's an atheist. I mean, she's Muslim by background, but she's an atheist, right? And
yes.
And Memory,
Sultan.
This website Memory, M-E-M-R-I. I guess what are they? One thing they do is they translate a lot of very radical Arab texts so that we'll know how radical these people are. And I gather Memory is they're right wing. I don't know if they're true neocons or what, but they're pretty far to the right.
But I agree. There is this annoying tendency on the right to either expect to be satisfied with nothing less than conversion to Christianity on the part of people who are believers in Islam, or they have to pass a sort of checklist of they have to renounce Islam, which is what Walfa Sultan wants.
Right. I mean,
or they have to pass a sort of checklist of yes, you agree to this, you agree to this, you agree to this. And that's no way to win over anybody. That's a way to alienate people.
Exactly. I mean, and Memory elevates her and sings her praises as if elevating her prominence is going to help us. And of course, it's just ideal propaganda for Al Qaeda to say, look, there's this former believing Muslim. Now she's in America. Now she's an atheist. Case closed. We lose that round of propaganda. And these Memory people seem so blinded by something or other that they actually think this is a message they should help propel throughout the world.
I think she makes some good points that may be lurking in the back of Islamic minds as they fail to abandon Islam, but in fact modify it so it's compatible with economic advancement. She makes some points about how Islam as practiced is incompatible with modern advancement, and it's good that somebody's making those points. It doesn't. I don't expect people to suddenly say, "Yes, I agree with Dr. Sultan, and I'm going to renounce Islam." But they may have it in the back of their minds that maybe.
The idea that this
change.
is the kind of Muslim intellectual who that we need to elevate in prominence is,
we can't elevate anybody. We shouldn't be in the business of elevating.
Well, no, but we are. I mean, for example, some philanthropic money is being spent trying to heal the breach between Islam or radical Islam in the West or something. And a lot of it is, I don't mean it's doing active damage, but a whole lot of this money is spent taking Muslims who are either secular to the point of being atheists, or at least secular enough so that, again, they have no real street cred with the people who in question that we want to influence, and trotting them around to these conferences and flying them around business class to here and there. And it's just missing the point.
But aren't you enough of a Marxist to have confidence that unless we're all blown up first, that eventually forces within the Islamic world will crop up that will open the path to democratic capitalism, to use a
first of all, that qualifier you started with, unless we're all blown up. I mean, I agree that if we're not all blown up, things will work out relatively well. And of course, you mean Marxist, not in the sense of economic philosophy, but in the sense of believing that material things, technology, and so on have an often decisive influence over ideas.
Yes,
and that, by the way, is where I tend to disagree with Lilla. Like many intellectuals, he likes to think that ideas are very, very important, and so he tends to see intellectual history as, almost determinative of facts on the ground. He's not simplistic. He does acknowledge the feedback between kind of, events on the ground and ideas,
right.
But it's basically a history of, kind of Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau, and then the conclusion, and that's where I disagree with that. But as for your question, I guess, in fact, he says something, I think I've got it somewhere, where he at one point kind of ridicules speaks dismissively of the idea that, social factors are the crucial things to try to manipulate and so on. And, well, as for the idea you're bringing up, here's a quote from the piece. For more than 2 centuries, promoters of modernization have taken it for granted that science, technology, urbanization, and education would eventually disenchant the charmed world of believers. I wouldn't be quite so dismissive of that as he is. I certainly don't think that's an automatic process. But, on the other hand, if you look at the nations where a lot of these radically religious ideas are coming from, they're actually not the most technologically advanced. They don't have, the highest education levels and so on. So that thesis that he's mocking is far from disproved.
No, I'm with the thesis he's mocking. And it seems crazy for people to expect that all modern societies will embrace the separation of church and state. I mean, half of America doesn't even embrace the separation of church and state.
Right.
So that part is sort of silly. I don't know if it's a straw man in his piece or not. But it does seem to me that a basic split I have with my friends on the right who argue we're in a titanic struggle with radical Islam and we have to win in Iraq and we have to win decisively and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And is that I think, all other things being equal, left to its own devices, as long as there's stability, all the Bob Wright narratives about how the world tends toward complexity and freedom will
and
take
interdependence.
Hold. And interdependence will take hold. And if Iraq is divided into 3 countries, as long as those 3 countries are stable and trading with each other, the dynamic will have room to take hold. It will eventually, given enough time, bring people into the democratic modern world.
No, I think in that example, Iraq, it's and with partition generally, if you let people be secure in their political identity, then they can calm down and start doing business with other kinds of people.
I mean, the alternative is that you need an Ataturk-like figure to sort of impose democratic values on Islam from above, and I don't think you do.
No, I think in this technological age that's not going to succeed. And even in Turkey, the success of that experiment is suddenly in doubt. Right.
But if we do somehow manage to have 3 stable, mutually hostile, but somehow not warring states in Iraq, we will have sort of jump-started, we will have forced the spring, we will have jump-started the Bob Wright process, I think. That'll be a good thing.
Yeah, I think naming it the Bob Wright process is a good thing, too.
I thought that would appeal to you.
Yeah. Whatever that process is, you're naming after me, I'm for it.
Okay.
Anything else on God? This is an excerpt from a book Loa is publishing, which presumably will get some attention. I mean, it did have a little bit of the feel of straining to attach a news peg to an excerpt from your book. I mean, that's my question about how the bulk of the argument is, how closely it's actually connected to the conclusion, but.
Right.
But I'm sure in the book itself that the argument is probably made with a greater length and with more subtlety and more convincing.
It's weird. When I was in college, one of my favorite book was a book called The Poverty of Liberalism by Robert Paul Wolff, which talked about how impoverished the liberal idea of separation of church and state is because it only tolerated bourgeois religions. And what if some crazy guy came along that wasn't the religion that came along that wasn't the bourgeois religion, that didn't advocate tolerance, that regarded the presence of a opposing sect as an abomination to the gods that it wanted to wipe out. And it seemed like a completely abstract concern at the time, but nevertheless a powerful argument. And sure enough, it turned out not to be an abstract concern.
What you thinking of? What?
A remark on that. What?
What showed it not to be an abstract concern?
the presence of a religion that wasn't tolerant.
Yeah.
That not all religions have to be tolerant, and that sort of the separation of church and state isn't capable of tolerating religions that aren't tolerant. And that seemed like a nice, clever academic point at the time, and it turns out it was a very concrete, important historical point.
Well, I certainly agree with Lila's overarching point that, look, religion is here to stay for a pretty long time. Get used to it. And it's not going to be this sterile thing for everyone that it is for many Americans who call themselves religious.
I agree with that.
Now we were going to talk about Facebook.
We can still talk about Facebook.
It's just that neither of us has a clue.
Well, you wanted to talk about the general implications for social equality.
Well, I want to get around to those because I want to mock you. And claim that the thesis of your book, The End of Equality, is now in grave danger, or one argument you make.
I have an answer, so mock away.
Well, wait, first let's briefly... I have some questions about Facebook. There's this big piece in Newsweek about Facebook that you suggested...
I've read the big piece.
Whoa. Jet planes. Okay. Low-flying jet planes. I thought we were I thought that perhaps someone had found the...
We're going to be able to pinpoint your location.
My secure, undisclosed, location. So Facebook, I think this is destined to be a discussion that is mocked in the comments section because we're like two old guys who don't do Facebook and we'll try to figure out what it's all about and won't get it. Did you have time to read the Newsweek piece?
I read the Newsweek piece.
And do you get what the appeal of Facebook is?
Yeah.
What is it?
You could sort of live your life out in the open, make all sorts of new connections. It makes the... it's like going to a cocktail party, except thanks to the miracle of the web, it's 100 times more efficient and faster.
Yeah.
And, that brings problems, i.e. there are a whole lot of people at the big cocktail party that you might not want to meet who can now meet you, and you have to deal with them. But on the other hand, the good outweighs the bad, and pretty much, it's here to stay.
Yeah, although the claim in the piece is that it's not so much about meeting people as providing you new ways to deal with the people you've already decided are your friends. But I don't know.
That's possible. I didn't get that argument.
Here's just as a tangent, here's something that kind of puzzles me. A quote from the Newsweek piece. Anything goes in the spirited Facebook world. For only $1, you can send a friend a gift. An image of a cute item like a polka dot thong, a champagne glass, or sushi. So, Mickey, on Facebook, you can send a JPG to somebody for only $1.
There's apparently a free app that's not quite as good, according to
I'd say it was inevitable that something replaced the dollar per JPG model. Anyway,
it didn't quite make it clear how Facebook was going to make money, as opposed to revolutionize the world. But
well, the general logic is where there's traffic. This has not always turned out to be true.
That's what you thought was going to happen with blogging heads.
Oh, did I not tell you? I'm rich. I'm rich now. Yeah. I'm rich.
Why?
That's why I'm on an island.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, I'm rich. Everything has worked out well. I'm really rich now.
Good.
My
lawyer will see you in the morning.
Well, yeah, and in fact, some of the claims about how Facebook is going to make money sound a little, if all goes well, much of what people do on the internet will be accomplished within Facebook. Instead of eBay, you can buy in Facebook's marketplace.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
crazy.
but
that seemed crazy.
It's not going to happen. I mean, all the merchandise is at eBay, and changing, and so everybody goes there, and for that reason, that's still where everybody sells, and changing that dynamic.
Yeah, you could just as well argue that all the social networking is going to occur within eBay. So there.
Yeah, you could, and it may be, or within blogging heads. Speaking of which, if viewers want to email or mention in the comments section things that they would like the Blogging Heads platform to make it easier to do with other viewers in the way of communication or whatever, they should let us know.
Can we send Blogging Noggin a polka dot thong?
I think probably Garbage Cowboys on that case. I wouldn't worry.
Okay.
Now, where the killer app is, I think, in terms of generating traffic, is in this. They say that Facebook has opened up the site to thousands of developers who can now unilaterally install applications designed to take advantage of Facebook's people connections. That seems to me brilliant, right? Because everyone who's got new social software will want to take it to Facebook because there's such a large existing audience.
Right.
and the good ones will come to the attention of people and be used, and for that reason, everyone will want to join Facebook because that's where this stuff will be. So that in terms of getting more and more traffic, it sounds to me like they may have the ticket.
I mean, it convinced me that everybody's going to be on Facebook, but it doesn't. It didn't convince me that therefore Facebook was going to make as much money as the people who are investing in it.
Look, if everybody's anywhere, you just put Google ads on and retire. I mean, I think
Google gets rich.
That volume of traffic you can monetize.
Yeah. Okay.
I think, but I still would like to know should I be on Facebook? I kind of, what would I get? I don't get it.
Yeah, you'll have an austere sort of site that sort of, and not many friends, you know.
Wait, you're describing me?
Won't be boastful. Yeah. I mean, the thing that irks me about all these sites is the need to boast, but, and to make yourself seem more interesting.
It's the overtness of the social advertising.
Yeah.
And the,
and you're competing with people who are bullshitting. Excuse me. That are exaggerating.
Yeah. I guess. But there's also the overtness of the social signaling. Like there's a quote in this piece from someone who says what she doesn't like is that, you know, when you decide you don't want to see any more of somebody, you have to cruelly delete them, you know, and it's like this very conspicuous thing. That seems to me an awkward feat. You know, how kind of out front and overt all the social discriminations are. That seems like it would make me uncomfortable. But I'm sure that we're being mocked in the comments section even as we speak.
Well, maybe you should start an alternative to Facebook that isn't so overt, a Facebook book.
A Facebook book?
Where you're allowed to mask all these things and everything is sort of not overt.
Mickey, you are a marketing genius. That's great.
But sort of a classy thing for austere, non-boastful people like you.
A Facebook book.
So what about social equality?
Okay.
I'm ready for your best shots here.
Let me caricature your argument in your book, The Inequality.
Okay.
You say, look, income equality, the thing that liberals have sought through progressive income tax and so on, equalizing income or moving income toward closer equality is hopeless. And there, right away, I had some issues because you act as if it's a binary thing. Either we can completely equalize incomes or we just shouldn't do anything. Whereas
the book argues that what seems to be true is that inequality is getting worse. It's moving in the non-egalitarian direction.
Okay, and anyway, you say liberals this should not be the central quest of liberals. Give it up on income equality. Instead, we should seek social equality and just insist that you treat these people who make 1/100th as much money as you do with tremendous respect when you meet them in the common, you know, wherever the commons is. And my point is that Facebook and other technologies are conspiring to make it so that there is no commons. I mean, there is no place where you have meaningful, kind of random social encounters that might well be with someone very different from you. I mean, here's a sentence from that Newsweek piece about Facebook. Thousands of groups form daily. Sufferers of cancer, conjunctivitis, or bad taste. People who scale public buildings in Princeton. Supporters of every politician imaginable. The point is, all these technologies make it easier for you to spend more and more time with people who are like you in some respect. And even when you're out in public, buying, something at a drugstore from some person very different from you socioeconomically, you may have your iPod on, listening to some music or audio book that's characteristic of your socioeconomic milieu.
Okay, a couple of responses. First, many of those groups cut across class lines. So one argument is that the central division in our society is class, and anything you can do, any multiplicity of alternative groupings that cut across class lines only increase social equality by blurring the dominance of class. So the classic thing is, rich and poor go and play beach volleyball, and there's an alternative hierarchy. Who's good looking, who can play beach volleyball. It doesn't have anything to do with whether you're rich or poor. Second, on Facebook in particular, those interest groups, those affinity groups, are not the nodes of interaction. The nodes are people who may be part of 20 or 30 of these groups. So it's actually a counteracting influence to the general tendency of the web, which is, all the child molesters go here, all the people who are interested in 18th century architecture go there, all the dog lovers go here. In fact, it's organized on the basis of something that transcends all these groups. Third, you're mistaking social equality for community. I'm not saying that, and I don't use the word community in my book, I'm not calling for community as an antidote to income inequality. I'm calling for equality of respect, which is a formal thing. Doesn't necessarily involve associating with other people or loving other people.
But wait, in your
or
book,
interacting with it just means that when you interact with people in the other sphere, you treat them with equal respect. It's all about respect.
Yeah, but your book also, I think, in a few strained paragraphs, argues for ways to actually encourage mingling among...
Well, you need some public sphere, and you need a public sphere big enough to make the equal respect people get in the public sphere.
Well, I'm saying that sphere is shrinking, and I don't think I totally get your... and it just seems manifestly true to me.
Also, when you run into somebody... Michael also makes this point that the public sphere is the sphere of formality. It's not the sphere of intimacy. When you run into a stranger on the street, you treat them with respect. You don't befriend them. There are some liberals who argue that sort of giving everybody feelings of friendship and goodwill toward their neighbors is the goal of politics. I don't say that. I think equal respect is the goal of politics. It's a formal thing. It's not an intimate thing.
It doesn't have to be intimate, but you agree in your book you want to encourage the contact, at which point the respect will be manifested, and I'm saying there's less and less of that kind of interclass, intergroup contact, and I mean, look, we buy more of our things online, and when you do go out, as I said, it really is true that half the time now, I mean, increasingly, you're on it, when you make that purchase at the Burger King drive-in window or whatever, you are on a cell phone call or you're on your iPod, you are in some way interacting with your native culture. And I don't understand, how does Facebook counteract? Wait a second, let's get back to beach volleyball. What was that about? You're saying rich and poor people play together on the same teams in beach volleyball?
The basic Walzerian argument is that you replace the single hierarchy of money with a multiplicity of hierarchies. And so and in Los Angeles, there is a multiplicity of hierarchies. There's rich and poor, there's good-looking and not so good-looking, there's athletic, not so athletic, and that's at least three. And so rich people don't necessarily win out at all of them. You can go to...
Yeah, but the good-looking people marry money, and the athletic people get better jobs, I mean...
Well,
anyway.
it tends through assortative mating to sort out, yes, in centrifuge-like fashion, but it's not monolithically yet a single class system with something like G, the social equivalent of G status, with a single ranking of status. There are multiple rankings of status. I'm a journalist. I can hold my head up in a class in a group of rich people because there are things I can do that they can't do, even though they're richer than I am.
No, but look, high-profile journalists and rich people are part of the same milieu. That's not meaningful mixing. That's always happened. That's not who you need to mix with, Mickey. Rich people. That's not what I'm asking.
Well, I spend the other half of my time at the 7-Eleven where there is a definite mix of people, and only, I would say, about 3% of them, 5% of them are on their cell phones. They're really annoying. They're a noticeable new trend. I agree. People who come and don't even interact. But the social hostility toward them is so great that it's hard to believe that that's the way society's going. In fact, it soon will be illegal to use many cell phones while you're driving.
In fact, one thing I've realized is that a lot of the resentment against people who use cell phones, it's not about the audio disturbance. It is resentment against the class you associate the cell phone user with. On a train, like I almost never use cell phone on a train. I had to a couple of times, and both times I got screamed at, and it became apparent from what they were saying. They had just decided they didn't like me. It wasn't the volume of my conversation that was the problem. They had heard enough of it to know that they hated me.
It might not necessarily be your class either, Bob. It might just be you.
Well, yeah, no. I mean, well, it was They decided they had my profile and I was the type of person they didn't like, which is perfectly valid conclusion.
I'm sure there's something to that, but were you talking about like your Princeton reunion or something?
No.
Yeah.
They figured out like my vocation, look, there are a lot of things about me not to like, you know? Fine, but I'm just making a point.
It does seem to me that it's the main objection to it is it's just rude. You're sitting there and there's somebody of whatever class interacting with the cashier and she's not paying any attention to what the human being in front of her face is doing and is sort of expecting him to do all her work for her.
Right, but that's different from the train. On the train scenario, you're not ignoring anyone. You wouldn't be talking to them anyway. The train scenario is different.
But I find it annoying whatever class the person is, and I hate them all.
I find it a little annoying, but it really depends on the type of person I conclude they are while I'm listening with fascination to the conversation that I claim is annoying me.
Yeah. I have one more point about social equality, which is if everybody is in if everybody is in their separate sort of affinity group communities of dog lovers or people who make mohawks with shampoo in the shower or whatever the ridiculous Facebook grouping is, and then they only meet in the public sphere under the most formal, unconnected circumstances. That's actually good for social equality. Look at the opposite. The opposite phenomenon is everybody lives in a small community where everybody's involved with everything. Everybody knows what everybody's up to. There's a single status ranking. That's where real social inequality comes in, because there's only one status ranking, and the people who are on top of the heap know they're on top of the heap. They'll always be on the top of the heap. They're at the top of the heap in all aspects of society, and the people who are on the bottom of the heap are on the bottom. So that has to be depressingly socially disrespectful for the people on the bottom. Whereas if you just meet formally with somebody you don't, and you're not part of the same group with them, you tend to treat them with equal respect because you actually don't know who they are. You don't know what groups they're in. They're not in your little dog lovers group. They're just some guy you met on the street. So it's conducive, in fact, to egalitarian interactions in the public sphere precisely because the person you're meeting is a stranger and not part of your community. How about that?
Wait, what's the subject of that sentence? It is conducive. What is conducive to greater social equality? The more different, discrete groups there are?
The segmentation, the balkanization of what had previously been one common life into a multiplicity of segmented sort of interests.
So because we're polite to strangers, a world where everyone's a stranger is a good thing?
Well, it's a good thing if all you care about is austere, ascetic social equality. Yes.
Well, you tell me. You're the one advocating it in lieu of income equality.
That's my. I think
that's your goal.
That's the goal.
A world where everyone is a stranger.
Look, you look at these studies that show that people don't really care how much money they have. They care about their ranking. Well, that tells me that it's all about the respect that comes from comparative status with your peers. The solution, the way to make everybody happy, is to give everybody equal status. Everybody gets respect. Everybody's happy. That's the argument.
A world of strangers. That should be the title of your next book. And then the little surprise is that it's something you're advocating.
You're a marketing genius too, Bob.
Thank you. So I don't know. You've got what? You got to leave for your medical emergency in what? 13 minutes?
Something like that. Yeah. Do you want to do the comments?
A couple of quick comments.
Yeah, and then I have a quiz for you.
Yeah, Abu Nur Al Irlande in the comments section says, hurrah for Mr. Wright's 99th dialogue. That was my last one. So I guess this means that my next one is, that this one is my 100th?
You've really done 100?
So they say. It's like, I don't know. It's like in the book 3 Bricks Shy of a Load by Roy Blunt, there's this scene where Blunt, when he's a sports writer, says to Willie Mays something like, hey, Willie, did you know you've had like 7 RBIs in 7 consecutive games or something? And Mays says to him, man, I don't keep up with that shit. But,
well, God, you've wasted a large portion of your life.
What?
If you've really done 100 of these things, think of what you could have done. You could have finished your book. You could have started a second family. There's all sorts of things you could have done.
This is kind of starting to hurt, Mickey, but Abu Nur raises the question, which is more impressive, 100 dialogues or 1,000 comments, by Blog and Noggin. I really got to go with it. I was seriously asking myself, looking at everything that goes into a dialogue, which is harder. I would say writing 1,000 of his kinds of comments would take more of my time than doing these 100. So We give him the
Okay.
nod. You know, I realize, though, Garbage Cowboy is in the 800s in terms of comments. And, you know, you never know what happened, apparently, this spring, shortly before his comment frequency fell off. He's an undergraduate in college, and he went out and found gainful employment this summer. And I think that's what took him totally out of the running. I mean, speaking of Willie Mays, you know, if Willie Mays hadn't spent 2 years in the Army, for all we know, he would have passed Babe Ruth before Henry Aaron. We will never know who would have gotten to 1,000 first had Garbage Cowboy not made the mistake of finding gainful employment.
You were so ready for self-effacement book. You're putting yourself below Blog and Noggin.
No, that's no. You can be below Blog and Noggin and still rank pretty damn high in the scheme of things, Mickey.
And is that modesty or false modesty? We leave it to our
No, I seriously did the calculation. Read some of his longer posts sometime.
Okay. Any other comments?
Well, how long is your thing going to take? Oh, quickly. A comment got deleted and by commenter NDK. He complained that it was deleted. First of all, so vast is the Blogging Heads empire now that I am not always the person who does the delete. There are people who have the power to autonomously delete. And this was deleted by somebody else, but when it was called to my attention, I kind of thought, you know, okay. I mean, here's what his comment was. You know, Robin Gavon, this writer for the Washington Post, was on with Ann Althouse. The comment consisted entirely of this. Quote, I only care about what Robin Gavon says if she has a nice ass, period, end quote. That was the whole comment. Now, when I saw that it had been deleted, I did say, look, I kind of think there's supposed to be a serious point here. He's mocking the idea that they're talking about Hillary's cleavage, right?
Right.
But it would be so easy to even use this sentence and convey it in other words, he could say overtly, you know, suppose I said, I only care about what Robin Gavon says, blah, blah, blah. Then it would be clear to everyone.
Well, Mike, you want to kill any subtlety. I missed his point, but now that you mention it, he had a point and it should have stayed up. I mean, it's pretty clear. But probably the guy who deleted it missed the point too. So
I defend the work
mistake.
of the person he refers to as the Comments Nanny.
It's an honest mistake, but they should put it back up.
No.
Really?
We're staying. The other thing is, you know, the people on Blogging Heads sometimes read the comments. It's not a safe assumption that a person just skimming them and happening upon them, Robin Gavon herself, would, kind of see, I understand.
Well, I understand, but you're saying that so everybody has to make everything painfully explicit, maybe with emoticons, you know, maybe to laugh out loud.
Yeah, I think
this is just a joke. You could label it joke.
Whenever you refer to a private part of someone's body, there should be some sort of visual illustration. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're a life-sucking prude.
Anyway, the point was he could even use the exact sentence, make the thing completely clear.
Well, you can always say things better, Bob. That doesn't mean you delete them.
I'll leave this between you and the Comments Nanny. You know, the Comments Nanny is someone you know. But you don't even know that she's working for us, so never mind.
Is it Lisa?
No.
Okay. Okay, just asking.
What else? This could take us quickly. I'm sorry. Sorry about this, Mickey. But Eric, well, should I get into this? I'll get into it another time.
Eric Alterman?
No, just a commenter named Eric.
Oh.
But I'll get into it next time. Well, because I think you want to give me a pop culture quiz or something.
This is a new segment I want to start, especially in the slow August weeks, called Educating Bob.
Yeah, the point is to ridicule me for not knowing much about pop culture.
You talk a good game about the public sphere, but you know nothing about the actual public sphere that most people know about. So I just want to give you like a pop quiz and bring you up to date.
Try me. Go ahead.
Brad and Angelina, who's on top in that relationship?
It's kind of a personal question.
It's not a personal question. Everybody knows the answer.
Brad and Angelina? Is that Angelina Jolie?
And Brad Pitt, yes.
Yeah, I was going to say Brad Pitt, so I know those things. I mean, how much do I have to know?
You have to know who's on top, which one, who's calling the shots, who's...
Well, I'll tell you what, how long has the relationship been going?
A couple years.
The man.
Wrong.
Oh, man, sorry. That's such a sexist answer. I'm sorry.
She's totally calling the shots. He's barely tolerated because he's the father of the kids. She's talking to her ex-husband. Jesus. Okay, you're completely out of it.
Okay.
Who's Jessica Biel dating?
Jessica Beal?
Yes. Do you
Is
know
she related to Jennifer Beal?
No.
Wasn't there Jennifer Beal
Yes.
in Flashdance?
Yes.
Those were the days, Mickey, back when I knew my pop culture.
Another hot actress.
What?
It's another hot actress, but her name is Jessica Biel.
Okay, what's the question? It
Who's
goes
she
without
dating?
saying that I don't know the answer to the question, Mickey.
Who's she dating? She's dating Justin Timberlake, Bob.
Now, that guy I know a thing or two about. He should have been ostracized.
You're right. And he had previously been dating Cameron Diaz.
Now you're talking.
So...
Something about Mary, I saw that. Do I get points for that?
And John Mayer had previously been dating Jessica Simpson. So who is John Mayer now dating?
Well, the first question is, who is John Mayer?
John Mayer is a guitarist and rock star.
Jessica Simpson, it's interesting you should mention her because the point when I knew I had totally lost touch with pop culture is when I saw her on magazine cover after magazine cover. It went on for months. And even after all this time, I realized I have no idea who this person is. Is she a singer? Is she an actress? Is she related to Marge Simpson? What is it?
She has no idea either, so you're on safe ground there.
Well, then I would get along with her.
But you're ducking the question.
What's the question?
Who's John Mayer dating?
Jessica Simpson.
Cameron Diaz.
Cameron Diaz.
Jesus.
And I also saw that John Malkovich movie in which Cameron Diaz also was.
Right. Britney Spears is involved in some sort of legal dispute. What is it?
I find her so revolting I cannot keep track. I'm sorry. I don't know. What is it?
Custody of her children.
I should have guessed that.
Which side of the dispute is her mother supporting?
Well, you would only ask this question if she's not supporting Britney.
So you might get one.
Okay, so I got that one.
She's supporting the husband.
Right, of course.
Where is Lindsay Lohan? Easy one.
Jail.
Rehab.
Completely
close. Wrong. Why is Nicole Richie unhappy?
Is she related to Lionel?
Yeah, she's, I believe, his adopted daughter.
Is she really?
Yes.
Good guess.
What country is Lionel Richie big in? Iraq.
You're kidding.
Huge in Iraq. They love it.
We've come back to the beginning, Mickey.
She's pregnant. There you go.
What is the point of this? Why do you want to humiliate me? Mickey, you know what the deal is?
I'm bringing you up to speed.
Mickey,
reading.
The normal, healthy state of mind for a man my age is to know very little about pop culture. You are the aberration. And do you know why you're the aberration? Do you know the answer to this? Here's a little quiz.
The answer is because I'm single, Bob.
That's right. It is.
I knew you were going to say
So you have only yourself to blame.
It all comes down to sex for you.
Love.
Typical.
Love. Matrimony.
Okay. Anyway, you got to read In Touch magazine.
Yeah, okay, well, so while I was reading that New York Times Magazine piece about God, you were reading In Touch magazine?
Correct.
Okay, well, that kind of speaks for itself. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, I better go seek medical attention.
And listen, you know what? If you have Lyme's disease, I'm raising it to $100. I'll give you $100 if you have Lyme's disease.
Especially if it has, mental effects.
But can we turn it into a bet so that if you don't have it, you have to give me, 5? So it's I'm giving you 20 to 1 odds?
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, so if you don't have Lyme's disease, you give me 5, and if you do, I give you 100?
Yeah, but we'll never know.
What do you mean?
Because if I don't get treated, we won't know if I had it, and if I do get treated, we won't know if I had it. Nobody's going to give me a test for Lyme disease.
I'll give you 5 to 1 that the guy doesn't even recommend treatment.
No, I'm sure that's going to happen.
Treatment?
They always laugh at me.
No, I'm not laughing. Your health is serious to me.
But anyway, we'll see. I will report back.
Okay.
Have a great vacation in your undisclosed location, which obviously isn't at high rent because it's being buzzed by loud jets.
You're right about that. It's a veritable beach shack.
Okay.
All right.
See ya.
See you around.